Welcome to another GINA program. This afternoon we have with us Minister of Foreign Affairs and Second Vice President, Honorable Carl Greenidge. Minister, we thank you for affording us the time.
Thank you very much for the welcome. I'm very pleased to be able to join you once again
Thank
to
you, sir.
discuss matters of common interest.
Minister, how would you rate the first 6 months in office?
Well, the first 6 months have been very challenging. The very first week posed us the challenge to our sovereignty. And since then, we have found ourselves having to plan to deal with a range of issues, the most important of which has been for the whole of that 6-month period, the question of protecting the sovereignty of Guyana. But it's been a fruitful period, and we have tried to ensure that we are not simply reacting to situations, but trying to anticipate them and put in place the necessary arrangements for dealing with them. So, first and foremost amongst these was the diplomatic effort to counter Venezuela's continuation of its, if you like, its unjust case against Guyana, its refusal to honor an international treaty, which it himself was party to. And we have worked with our bilateral and multilateral partners in pursuit of that goal. Outside of the area of the sovereignty, we've had to deal with issues such as trying to strengthen the administrative arrangements within the ministry. That is one side that has needed attention. We have dealt with the matters of international policy. You've had CARICOM, Commonwealth, and other heads of government meetings where international cooperation has been a focus. We've participated and contributed in a prominent way by being part of the either chairing or organizing international meetings such as the post-2015 economic agenda, where Ambassador George Talbot was a significant player there. You've had issues on Mercosur, which has to do with the regional integration movement outside of CARICOM. There have also been issues pertaining to WTO and the trade obligations of Guyana, answering to the WTO as to why certain obligations hadn't been met when they would be met, answering questions raised by our trading partners as to how we propose to deal with issues on the trade cooperation front. And we have also, of course, worked in the context of the European Union and the African, Caribbean, and Pacific group of states with whom we collaborate and pursue a number of issues, including the Economic Partnership Agreement arrangements. As we came towards the end of the year, there were major international events, quite important ones, pertaining to the WTO round, the attempt to conclude the Doha round, which was a round trying to put in place a framework for removal of trade barriers, but a framework would be removed was due to be removed in such a way as to give priority to the requirements of the developing countries. That has turned out to be something of a disappointment, but at one stage it looked as though it would be a failure altogether. That's not been the case. But I believe that not enough was done for the developing countries in that context, and it remains to be seen how that will finally be resolved. At the same time, December saw the conference on the environment, which was an area in which Secretary General Ban Ki-moon of the United Nations played a critical role, and in which Guyana has very important interests. And we were doing a lot of work in that regard in the context of our officers at the UN level, and we contributed to the preparation and also the negotiations in Paris with the other ministries that had responsibility, the sectoral ministries that had responsibility for this area. In that sense, therefore, it was a challenging year. It's been a challenging period for the year. It has been a busy and full period, and it has been quite fruitful because a number of things were done, a number of things were achieved, and we are, I think, at the end of 2015, able to say that the broader goals that we set ourselves have been achieved. You'd had a commitment, for example, in terms of now of outcomes as opposed to just events, to say that the most important of the challenges that faced us had to do with sovereignty, as I mentioned. And in that regard, we were able to not merely call upon the United Nations Secretary General in his role as the good officer in the Geneva Agreement, but we were able to get them to put together meetings and to embark on a process by which the Secretary General is expected to identify a means of going forward and to set out a timetable that we expect to ultimately lead to resort to the International Court of Justice for bringing this controversy to a speedy and definitive end. The matters to do with trade, we have made our contributions. These are ongoing exercises. They're not completed as such, but Guyana has been able to formulate its position in a manner consistent with our interests and along with our CARICOM partners. And so we are, again, reasonably pleased about those outcomes.
What would you say, Minister, are the other achievements we were able to achieve or able to have under our belt for the 6 month period?
Well, at the level of the Ministry of Finance, so at the level of the Ministry of at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, next in line after dealing with the issue of the environment has been the matter of trade. These are the trade issues we've dealt with. There have been bilateral issues. The trade I've mentioned, they perhaps are easier to identify in the sense that these were not decisions to be taken by Guyana itself, but we are make an input into fashioning regional and international positions, and those have been as I identified. But the other exercises were by and large at the bilateral level. These are cooperation agreements of various types. We had to work along with the Norwegians to try and, if you like, salvage the agreement between ourselves and the Norwegians, and to ensure that in the period ahead we will be able to fully access the funds which they'd committed in the first phase, the 245 million, and to ensure that it actually goes on projects that are relevant to what we were calling a low carbon development strategy. We also have worked with the European Union. As you know, the European Union had committed to Guyana a significant quantity of financial resources, but those resources were blocked for political reasons because Guyana had failed to implement a number of things that it had committed itself to at a general political level and also at the level of the industry, that is the sugar industry in particular. We have, as far as I'm concerned, now met all the commitments that we had given to the European Union. Those commitments pertain to reviewing the status and performance of the sugar industry and defining the next phase, how we would treat with the challenges and difficulties that it has. The commitments also related to obligations to pass legislation in the arena of anti-money laundering and protection from terrorism, and also in relation to procurement. In most of these, we have achieved the results. In the case of the legislation, everything perhaps except that pertaining to the procurement has been put in place, and the reason why the procurement itself has not been put in place is because we are in a parliament in which we depend upon the other major political party to arrive at the selection of the body. So, insofar as the foreign affairs is concerned, those achievements have been drawn or brought to the level of, drawn to the attention of our EU partners, and we are in the process of trying to ensure that the resources that had been pledged can be disbursed in a timely manner. Yes, I was saying that from amongst the activities at the bilateral level, we had worked with the European Union to ensure that we got resources that had been agreed we would get, providing we met certain commitments. We've also worked quite assiduously with a number of the individual bilaterals, ranging from the US, which has provided support in the area of strengthening the Minister of Public Security's arena, also in relation to the AG's chambers and related activities. There's been assistance from the UK, considerable discussion in relation to the project which has been suspended in the past under the EU framework, in the context of security issues and the controversy over the refusal to sign the agreement. And there have been a number of, if you like, decisions taken in relation to matters which were in suspension, the acceptance of agreements for a number of countries within the region, outside of the region, Europe, Central Europe, Eastern Europe. So new ambassadors have been received and steps to cooperate. They've been with some of the traditional donors. In the case of Japan, for example, whilst we've had a running and ongoing program with Japan, in the last half of the year last year, the Japanese technical expert here engaged with our officers, and coming out of that has been a proposal from Japan to contribute to the attenuation of the flooding of Georgetown. And that is a process that is particularly interesting and useful in that it now brings in additional resources and skills from Japan. And as part of that mechanism now, we will pull together the existing programs, to which other bilaterals may have been contributing, work by the Ministry of Agriculture, National Drainage and Irrigation Board, the municipality, disparate areas, central Georgetown, wider drainage areas, now going to be brought within one framework, and within that framework, there's going to be some coherence and a plan that will treat with the problem of the constant flooding of Georgetown. So you've had, on a number of fronts, not merely meetings, exchanges, but concrete proposals for enhancing the situation of Guyana. With Cuba, for example, where, you know, traditionally we've had a long-standing program of medical assistance. There is to be a project which looks at the training of those who are working with persons that are challenged physically in a number of ways. This is going to involve the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education, and the officers are working on coordinating it. And coming out of the discussions from the COP21, that is the environmental conference in Paris, there will be a team from Norway coming for us to try to pull together the different threads of cooperation that perhaps did not work in 2015 as the PPP government had indicated to the public it would. And so these are amongst the things we're working on.
I understand. So how soon can we see some of these programs and so on being implemented?
Some of those programs are in train. They're not necessarily long time lags in them. In the case of the European Union and the assistance from the European Union, one would expect that to be delivered in the first quarter of the year. This is the provision of funds, a lot of which is funds on the balance of payments front. There have been extensive discussions with the Indian government. Many of those projects started prior to May of 2015, but in the discussions between ourselves, the relevant ministries, and especially the Ministry of Finance, we expect that a line of credit somewhere in the region of $50 million will be made available to Guyana to cover a range of areas, including the construction of roads, a center of excellence, and a number of other areas. Those should unfold in the course of 2016. Some of them will start in the first quarter, some of them will be later on. In the case of the project for the drainage of Georgetown, when you say how soon they will start, I'll say to you that the physical work is perhaps the last stage, because they have now to devise plans, draw up plans, integrate the existing ones before construction is started. So that dimension is already on the way, and we can therefore look forward to in the course of the next 18 months or so, seeing the results of a number of these. As regards things like missions and embassies and the agreement, the ambassadors come in and they go out. Some of them are non-resident ambassadors, and they come in. We've had discussions with ambassadors and teams ranging from the Koreas to Malaysia, Indonesia, and others that have visited.
Understood. Minister, follow up the drainage project. Is there a cap on it, a financial cap on it?
No, there's the cap on it. Do you mean whether one has an estimated value? I think in the first instance, the Japanese input to that project is somewhere in the region of $15 million. But it is part of a wider project, and the sum total will only be clear when they have finished agreeing on all the elements and how much all the other donors will contribute.
Understood. What has been done to forward the country's foreign policy so far since you took office?
Well, the efforts to improve our foreign policy turn one on the structure of the ministry. We've been examining that, and that is going to be evident in 2016. But in the course of 2015, what we have done is to supplement the existing skills within the ministry by having resort to a team of former ambassadors who would have worked in some of the key areas and who provide a sort of a litmus test for some of the policies that come out of the ministry, and who themselves are able to provide advice to supplement the work. As you know, for 20 odd years, the PPP government has managed the foreign policy primarily on almost a personalized basis. So as you would have, I don't know whether you were there when we were discussing the question of the border controversy and the actions of Venezuela, one of the PPP members was explaining to us that our failure was a result of not inviting the former president or the current president of Venezuela for a drink when they visited, or when we visited Venezuela. We seem not to understand at the level of the opposition that foreign policy is a systemic process. It doesn't turn primarily upon either drinking partners or the personalization of policy. It has to do with identifying a goal, working on a set of steps to achieve that goal, engaging the other side at appropriate levels, at appropriate times, using other fora to help you to move forward in relation to those goals. And it is really a mistake to assume that just because some foreigner is nice to you, that their intentions are necessarily honorable, or that they share the same goals with you. So our main task in that regard has been to strengthen the capacity of the ministry. You've had a situation where in the last 23 years, we've inserted a cadre of politicians, for the most part, to head the ministry, non-career persons, and people have been in this ministry for 18 years, 19, and similar periods, and have not been posted abroad. Now that those political appointees have been removed, and we have done that, they have all ended their terms, we have to find a way in which we appoint ambassadors, especially in difficult and tricky situations. That's not going to leave us in a situation as though you suddenly take a jumbo, one of the big Boeings, and put it in the hands of somebody that's just finished training on a link trainer, on a simulator, in a room. You need, in most of these instances, to have people with practical experience as well as training, so that our foreign policy doesn't crash. Consequently, we've started a process. It's almost a transition by which we will appoint, in the first instance, a number of experienced persons, either on the diplomatic front or commercial front, to deal with the economic and diplomatic activities, and at the same time to ensure that those who have been here within the ministry at the middle level and lower senior levels, or even the more junior levels, that they are given an opportunity now to be posted abroad and to gain the experience before they themselves can take over the running of our formulation of our economic policy and our diplomatic policies abroad. So it is a phased process. It isn't going to deliver overnight a set of 19-year-old ambassadors running the country, which you get the impression that some people are saying this is what is needed. You need to have your international interests protected, pursued, formulated, and implemented by persons who are appropriately experienced. And the diplomatic arena is a complex one. It means that it is going to be best advanced by those with experience, those who know how to handle unusual situations. You have to have persons who can cope with the language challenges, who already have languages, or when they're in place, they can develop those languages, who already have international relations experience of some kind of training. So the idea is that by the end of 2015, we will have in place the arrangements to ensure that our business can be pursued by those equipped to pursue that. So at the level of the ministry, you've been revisiting a number of areas, assignments. We've also looked at the structure, and in the course of 2016, you will get a modification of the structure of the ministry so that it will be a lot more focused. It will give prominence to the area that the president once addressed by way of economic diplomacy, trade, and other matters also will have to be addressed. So the skill mix in the ministry is in the course of being re-examined, and in order to ensure that that the heads of mission are fully acquainted with the new situation that we face, we have reactivated the Foreign Service Institute, and the idea is that the institute will draw upon the available skills. We're not speaking about setting up a rival to the University of Guyana or the University of the West Indies or any of the international agencies, but we're speaking of an arrangement by which one bridges the gap between academic training and practical experience, specifically in the arena of international relations practice, protocol, these sorts of matters, multilateral as opposed to bilateral diplomacy, in a manner that can only come from imparting experience of those who've been on the front line, dealt with the international agencies, World Bank and the United States, and the complexities of these countries and their relations, and that is what we're in the process of doing as you leave 2015 and move into 2016.
Understood. The consuls general, were they all changed?
No, the consuls general have not all been changed, and they will not be changed immediately. This will be. You mean the consuls general, or you're speaking to the honorary consuls?
Consuls general.
Well, the consuls general are changed and will be changed as part of the same process by which ambassadors and high commissions are changed. And when new ones will have been accepted, the agreement has been accepted by the host countries, we will let you know. I want to take this opportunity to explain to you that whilst this has been a very sexy area in the press, everybody wants to know why and who is to be the new ambassador or the new high commissioner there. Let me just make it clear that the failure to announce the names of a new band of heads of mission, including consuls general, does not arise from any negligence. It is a process that works this way. You, of course, have to go through your own internal process of identifying appropriate persons and getting a clearance. But you, at the same time, need to ensure that the host country is informed of those that you're interested in appointing. And the host countries need to go through a process. And whilst Guyana itself may not have as thorough a process as, say, a country like the United States, with many interests, many threats, many dangers facing it, we recognize that there's a protocol and a right on the part of those countries to examine the names that they receive carefully. And in one of our partners' cases, they reminded us that the process can take up to 3 months just to vet, and that's assuming they don't come back to you to ask questions. So this is one of the challenges. This is one of the reasons why the process of announcing names has taken so long. We are changing almost all the heads at the same time, and in doing that, we run the risk that because countries will take a long time, it looks as though nothing has actually happened. But that is not the case, and in the course of the coming weeks, we will get reactions. It also needs to be said that a number of those who've applied and a number of those that are interested, by virtue of their status, are sometimes not eligible for some of these positions. It's also the case, and I tell this to everyone, so I will tell it to you also, that the most glamorous postings for most people, especially those outside of the Foreign Service, is the North. Everybody wants to go probably to New York if possible, but New York is a specialized place. We got the impression that the Consul General is just there, entertaining visitors, carrying them to the airport, carrying them to dinner and so forth. That is not even 70% of the work of the Consul General. So the Consul General has community obligations to attend, to participate in a number of events involving Guyanese, interfacing with opinion-forming elements within the community, universities, research institutes, as well as Guyanese Association, Caribbean Association of various sorts. And in New York also there's an ambassador, and that ambassador is the permanent representative to the United Nations. It is a specialized area. Multilateral diplomacy is different from bilateral diplomacy. It requires special skills. And so whilst everybody wants to go to New York, most of those who would have applied will not be appropriate to take up a position such as that. The ambassador in Washington, who deals with relations between Guyana and the United States, also has obligations as regards the OAS and the Organization of American States. Is a forum that one best works in if you have some facility in languages other than English, because a good deal of its work is carried out in Spanish, for example. So when people apply, they forget these sorts of obligations, and those who make a noise forget that in the host countries, you're not always dealing in a situation such as in Guyana or in the United States. These are fora, the fora such as Belgium, in which the representative to the European Union operates. You're looking for persons with a capacity that requires them to multitask, to deal with a range of countries, range of languages, range of cultural and protocol practices. So it is something of a challenge to identify and find persons immediately to deal with those areas.
Understood. Follow up to that. What then becomes of the persons who are changed, the persons who are removed from that post? What do we do with them?
Well, The situation is this: if you are a political appointee in in a career diplomacy service, you acknowledge, you accept in the first instance that you're not there forever. You're not a career public servant, and therefore, when the government, and more importantly, the president on whose behalf you're posted to a place steps down, you understand that you need to step down as well, and you have to make your own arrangements for your future. A significant proportion of these persons already had reached the age of retirement. Almost all of them had also contracts, 1 year or 2 year contracts, and those contracts would have expired, and there's no obligation on the part of the government to retain them. Some of them have been retained, and the others are free to enter the system just like anyone else and find and pursue vacancies which they see, and enter into agencies to which they can make contributions that are meaningful.
Understood. Going now, with that stage or that platform being set, going in now to 2016, what else can we see coming out or happening? Not just coming out rather, but what can we see happening therefore in 2016 with that platform set?
Well, with the platform, you will see, I think, an improvement in the quality of the representation of Guyana. We hope that in all the missions, you will have representation that can deal with the challenges that they face, both by way of passing information and analyzing the information to the capital. You will see in this capital, in Georgetown, leadership of the ministry that is deeper. In other words, you've had a number of people at senior and other levels who haven't been posted abroad. You've had one head director general, and all the others are perhaps not terribly long in very senior levels in the system. We are proposing to strengthen that so that the ministry and its leadership at the professional level are not merely the work of one person. You're going to have a team at the top which is experienced in a range of areas, whether it is in economics, diplomacy, and so forth. So the work of Ambassador Jardine Waddell will be supported and strengthened with experience and skills, and the FSI will help to supplement the work that that is being done at the leadership level.
Understand. What does that mean for us in terms of improved quality of representation in these areas, in these countries, in these communities?
Well, it will mean that in some instances you get faster communication. Things had occurred in Venezuela, and long after they occurred, we still hadn't been aware of why and exactly how they occurred. That is going to be one. You're going to have discussions between ourselves and others that is better informed. It's supported by others who would have done analytical work. You will have a lot more done in the ministry on the economic and trade and commercial front than has been the case in the recent past. A lot more. That is generally
it. So overall, in other words, what would have happened is the foundation would have been laid strongly, firmly, would have been cemented for the ministry to actually be more efficient in their work in terms of forwarding Guyana's foreign policy agenda.
Yes, that's the intention, and as regards each of the areas in which we work, whether it is bilaterals, we will be seeking first and foremost to deal with the issue of sovereignty and the representation of a sovereignty. We will be seeking to project a better image of Guyana, both by the quality of the representation and in relation to access to information about activities domestically, which can enhance our image abroad.
It's important. I'm glad you touched on that. Lots of persons may not be able to appreciate that, but I am of the opinion that where you can have a better image on the international sphere, it makes a difference in terms of how countries view you, and for the level of participation you can get, the level of cooperation you can get from the other countries.
Sure, sure. It does matter to the extent that Guyana is able to have ambassadors that command the respect of others. The others will listen to the opinions that Guyana has and the explanations, and that will enhance the issue of communication.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other thing that we would have missed, Minister?
Well, there are many things. I don't even know that one can begin to list them. What I wanted, or what I would say to you, is that on the sovereignty front, we will expect the UN to continue with a process that it started and ensure that Venezuela adheres to its word. We also, you'd be aware that we had indicated that we are aware that Venezuela had, or persons associated with Venezuela had sought to change Google Maps, for example, in which the area where you had the uprising in the Essequibo by slaves, this area had been the road running, in fact, even running alongside Damon's monument, one of the leaders of the slaves were, and I think this is an insult, the road had been renamed after Simon Bolivar, who never set foot in Guyana, never had an interest in Guyana even. And we have approached Google, and I'm happy to say that I was informed that Google has corrected that quite egregious error. So there are a number of areas like that.
What are some of the key conferences that we will be participating in for 2016?
Well, this year you have, of course, conferences, heads of government. There are trade conferences. I mean, CARICOM heads of government. You have the various trade conferences. There are regional ones even in the course of the 20s, let's say the 24th, 22nd, 24th of January. There is the annual CELAC meeting of Latin and Caribbean heads of government. It's a very, very important meeting in that context. You've got a non-aligned movement summit, which is to take place this year in Venezuela, and you've got similar forum meeting at the UN level to pursue goals that have been set in the international arena.
Minister, thank you a lot for your time.
Okay, it's been my pleasure.
Thank you, Minister.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for watching.